Tanks, which played a crucial role in World War II, were both powerful offensive tools and incredibly vulnerable to damage. Their lifespan on the battlefield depended on many factors: the intensity of combat, the terrain, the skill of the crew, and the availability of spare parts. Depending on the tank model, the wartime conditions, and the strategy, a tank's survival on the front lines could range from a few hours to several days. Despite their impressive firepower and armor, tanks were exposed to numerous threats. The primary risk for a tank was being hit by enemy artillery, anti-tank weapons, or the fire of other tanks. Even the most advanced models, such as the German Panzer V Tiger or the Soviet T-34, could be destroyed by a well-aimed shot to weak spots like the engine, turret, or tracks. Even if the tank was not destroyed, mechanical damage could immobilize the vehicle, making it an easy target. For example, during the Battle of Kursk in 1943, German tanks were exposed to heavy fire from Soviet anti-tank artillery and tanks. Within just a few hours of intense fighting, many German tanks were destroyed or immobilized. On the other hand, Soviet T-34s were known for their high mobility and easier repairability, which gave them an advantage on the battlefield. But they too were vulnerable to rapid damage. Tanks were not indestructible, and their survival largely depended on how quickly repairs could be made. Armies, including the German, Soviet, and Allied forces, deployed mobile workshops that attempted to repair damaged vehicles as quickly as possible. However, field repairs were challenging, and the availability of spare parts was limited. In the case of German tanks, which were among the most technologically advanced, repairs were often time-consuming and required specialized tools and highly trained mechanics. Larger vehicles like the Tiger were more complicated to repair, reducing their lifespan on the battlefield. On the other hand, Soviet T-34 were much easier to fix due to their simpler design, but they still required significant effort from the crew and mechanics. Equally important in determining a tank's lifespan were the terrain conditions. Tanks during World War II often fought on difficult terrain, mud, mountains, and elevations. Harsh weather conditions such as rain, snow, or extreme heat also affected the reliability of the machines. Tanks that became stuck in the mud or were unable to move through damaged roads became easy targets for the enemy. In winter, particularly on the Eastern Front, tanks struggled with engine operation in extreme temperatures, and oils and fuels thickened, making them harder to start. In these conditions, crews often had to perform improvised repairs using available materials to stay in the fight. Based on various reports and analyses, the average lifespan of a tank in intense combat could range from a few days to a few weeks. In the most brutal battles, such as the Battle of Falaise or Normandy, tanks could be destroyed within just a few hours of combat. For example, during the Kursk offensive in 1943, around 2,000 tanks were destroyed on both sides, with some of them surviving only a few days of heavy bombardment and clashes. Meanwhile, during the Normandy invasion, some Allied tanks, like the Sherman, managed to survive much longer due to faster repairs and better logistical support. The lifespan of a tank on the battlefield during World War II was a variable dependent on numerous factors, from technology to strategy, crew skill, and weather and terrain conditions. Tanks, despite their power, were vulnerable to quick destruction from anti-tank fire, mechanical failure, or terrain accidents. Their survival relied on the effectiveness of repairs, the availability of spare parts, and wartime logistics. In any case, tanks were exposed to danger, and their longevity was limited in the brutal world of World War II. If you want more, let me know in the comments, subscribe, and leave a like. Thank you.